Number 13. Ooh. Oh, sorry. Love Friday the 13th. Hope that didn't scare anyone. So book 13 is The Martian by Andy Weir. This is one I just started reading the beginning of. I only have it in ebook, so I'll give you the cover here. It's the story of a guy called Mark Watney, who is botanist and mechanical engineer on the 4th, I believe it is, or the 3rd. Should have written all this down. Oops. Mission to Mars. There have been these missions to Mars set out where people go and stay there for 90 days and take samples and see what works. There's a big sandstorm. Everyone goes to the launcher to try and get off Mars, and something hits him and punctures his suit. And when he wakes up, he is alone on Mars. That's the premise of the book, that he's alone on Mars and he has to survive. At first he thinks he has to survive until the next Mars mission. So he thinks he's got, several thousand days because they're not going to be there for a good 4 or 5 years. And he's trying to work out how he can grow enough food to survive that long, to have enough nutrients. And there's loads of interesting stuff. But what struck me most about this book was the humour. The character of Mark Watney is a really well realised character. He has all these little quirks and foibles and these odd little things he'll say, and it's just like how we all act ourselves when we think we're alone. The bits that we sort of sheen over for anyone who doesn't know us well enough to deal with our weird, So I really sort of bonded with Mark Watney as a character. And that just pulled me into the story, the fact that I bonded with this guy, and then all his trials and tribulations. He comes up with these madcap solutions to things, and he's like, hey, I could get blown up, or I could get set on fire, but hey, what the hell, let's do it. And that kind of gung-ho sort of throw the rule book out of the window attitude to things is also really appealing in this book. And the fact that most of his ideas work and they're really clever and off the wall. And eventually, because they have satellites around Mars that are taking photographs, they eventually discover that he's still alive. I don't want to give away too much. I don't think it's given away too much to say that he's discovered alive and that they have to try and figure out a way to contact him, and moreover a way to get him back, because he's had a state funeral, everything by this point. It's just like had this massive funeral, poor Mark Watney, lost on Mars and all this stuff. Then they have to sort of deal with the fact that, oh no, he's actually alive. Oops. Let's just shift gears a little bit and attempt to work towards perhaps bringing him back safely. It's kind of like Carry On, Get Me Off of Mars, but serious, if you know what I mean. It's not full-on madcap satire or comedy, but it has such a comic underbelly to it. The anarchic silliness of everyday life and what happens when we're trying to do things that are a little bit crazy, because rescuing him from Mars is not going to be a simple prospect, and his survival on Mars is not going to be a simple prospect. So everything he has to do and everything they have to do back on Earth, NASA, to try and rescue him, has to, by necessity, be a little bit off the wall. Now, I will admit I know absolutely zip about the science in this or anything. I have interest in science, I love it, but I have the attention span of a gnat. So if I wanted to learn whether any of this was like realistic, it would take me far more research than my gnat brain could cope with. So I'm just going to assume, for the sake of argument, that he did a lot of research and a lot of it is very realistic. I'm out there as saying that. Don't even care. The ending also feels really realistic, and it's really tense because stuff's happening all the time. It's kind of a measure of how much I bonded with Mark Watney as a character that I actually got severely outraged on his behalf several times when there was so much peril coming in his direction. It was like, seriously, give the poor guy a break, cut him some slack. But it works for the story because there's absolutely no way that Mars is going to be cutting anyone any slack. So yeah, it's super believable. It's very, very funny. It's full of really wonderful, well-realised characters. The characters back at NASA are brilliant. Mark Watney is brilliant. His crew, we don't see much of them, but what we do see of them, we get to know them quite well. And I really liked them, especially his captain. She really needs to cut herself some slack as well. And I stormed through this book. I stormed through it, partially because of my close bonding with Mark Watney, but also because I just so enjoyed it, even though it was super duper tense in way too many places. I would, yes, thoroughly recommend that you read it. I think pretty much everyone's read it anyway. And there's a movie coming out with Matt Damon or something. But yeah, anyone who hasn't read it, pick that shit up and read it. It is so good. Next week is Girl Interrupted, and that is the book based on a true story. So I hope you'll come along and hear my thoughts on that, and I will see you next Friday. Bye bye.